Hey everyone, this is J-Dog and I'm here with another video. So this is about the hypocrisy of the non-black, the anti-black American boxing fans. These are American boxing fans who are non-black, but seem to be, these are the so-called patriots, the American boxing fans who are supposed to be for America, they live in the United States, they represent America, we have to support the flag, support the troops, but yet these people are hypocrites because they will boo and hiss and say negative things about black American fighters. They will cheer for foreigners who are non-black. They will cheer for the Europeans fighters from Britain or Russia or Ukraine, but would boo the American fighter. Well, they will boo and they will boo and hiss at the black American fighter. Yet, when it comes to Joe Smith Jr., this guy right here, Joe Smith Jr., I saw whole bunches of cheers for chants of USA from the so-called black, anti-black American fan. I saw cheers and praises for the so-called American fans. But when Jermell Charlo was representing America, when he was taking on Brian Castanos and became undisputed. Now, in the press conference of Jermell Charlo, I heard a lot of boos and only a small number of cheers, even though Charlo was like, "This is America. We represent America here." And basically, you had mostly the Argentina supporters, the people that supported Brian Castanos. They cheered the loudest in the press conference for the Charlo-Brian Castano fight. But the so-called Americans, only a small number, mostly the black Americans, were the only ones who were cheering for Jermell Charlo. And it was a small number. You even had one woman tell Charlo that no one wants you here, meaning that no one wants Jermell Charlo in the United States. She was like that the Americans don't want Jermell Charlo representing the United States, but guess what? He's the one who is winning on the behalf of the United States. He's an American fighter. Meanwhile, here's the thing. Jermell Charlo represented the United States of America. He won and became undisputed in the junior middleweight division. Meanwhile, people in press conferences and in the crowds in the fight involving this fighter, he was fighting a Russian-Canadian fighter by the name of Arthur Beterbiev. Joe Smith Jr. got dominated. He lost. Yeah, this fighter, Joe Smith Jr., and this is nothing against Joe Smith Jr. I like Joe Smith Jr., but this fighter lost. His fight was recently. He lost this fight. He got knocked out in the second round by the Russian-Canadian Arthur Beterbiev. And yet, he is the only American fighter right now that got cheered and praised in both the press conferences and in the audience. I heard all the USA chants in the audience for this man. People were representing USA with the American flags, yet he lost this match to Arthur Beterbiev. He lost to the Russian Canadian. Meanwhile, Jamal Charlo got cheered, got booed, but he's the one who won his match, and he represents America. Him, Stephen Fulton, he got booed, but he represented America. He won his match. He's now unified in his division. I believe it's the featherweight or the super bantamweight division, one of those. Franchon Cruz DeZern, she's now undisputed in the women's super middleweight division. Then, of course, we have the welterweight division with not one but two black Americans dominating the welterweight division. Errol Spence Jr. on the left, and on the right, Terrence Crawford. Errol Spence has the most belts. He is a unified champion. He has the WBC, WBA, and the IBF after defeating fighters like Sean Porter and a Cuban fighter by the name of Eudenis Ugas. Meanwhile, in the WBO, the WBO's champion, which is the only other sanctioning body, is currently under the waist and arm of this man, Terrence Bud Crawford, the man on the right. He beat an Australian by the name of Jeff Harn from that belt and has defended his title successfully. Both fighters are undefeated and could actually face each other pretty soon for undisputed. Both represent America and both are black fighters. Devin Haney. Now, he actually fought overseas in Australia against George Kambosos Jr. He is also undisputed. Now, the difference is, well, first of all, I'm glad that Devin Haney won. I support Devin Haney. Now, when he was fighting, the only reason why he was getting booed, now here he was getting booed, but the only reason why he was getting booed in his recent match because he was not the home crowd hero. The guy he beat was, and that was George Kambosos Jr., or should I prefer as Kambozo the Clown. But you have even Americans, so-called patriots, accuse black fighters for not traveling to fighting for championships or defending titles. But Devin Haney, he went to Australia, went through all kinds of hardship, like the fact that his father was almost not allowed in the country because they wouldn't give him the visa because of what happened 30 years ago. Luckily for Devin Haney, that his father, Bill Haney, did get a visa and got to support his son in person. And guess what? Because they were trying to mess with Devin Haney, but Devin Haney still prevailed and became undisputed and brought the titles to the United States. But he didn't get the appreciation from the so-called patriots, the so-called, they are for America, proud to be American, moron people, didn't cheer for Devin Haney. We have Shakur Stevenson, who beat a Mexican fighter by the name of Oscar Valdez, or should I say Oscar Valpez. Shakur Stevenson is unified in what I believe is the super featherweights, also known as the junior lightweight division. He has three sanctioning body belts and one belt that is owned by a magazine called The Ring Magazine. He's unified. He represented America. Not to mention, this guy is a silver medalist in the Olympic Games. He's not getting cheered by the American fans like Joe Smith Jr. Now, speaking of Olympics, Clarice Shields is a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. She won the gold. And she was undisputed not once, but twice in 2 divisions. This is why she even got a World Guinness Book of World Records spot. Yeah, she's in the Guinness Book of World Records for being undisputed twice and being undisputed in 2 divisions. And guess what? Though she's not undisputed, she is unified still, because one of those divisions, she only kept 4 of the belts, 3 or 4 of the belts. She only needs the one that this British fighter named Savannah Marshall got. She beats that fighter. She'll be undisputed for a 3rd time. She will hold the record for how many times in the, I believe it's the middleweight division for the women's division. She would be undisputed in the middleweight division for women's boxing twice, and that also overall undisputed for a 3rd time. But she's not getting cheered. She's being disrespected by the so-called American boxing fan, the so-called patriot, or should I say patriot. You get the picture here. The point is, let's not talk about, and by the way, one more fighter, this is Jamal. This is the brother of Jamel, the person I talked about earlier, the twin brother. He is the WBC middleweight champion. You get the picture here. There's a reason why I'm showing all these black American fighters who are champions. The reason why I'm showing this is because I'm trying to show the hypocrisy of the so-called American boxing fan. Well, or should I say, the non-black American boxing fan. The anti-black American boxing fans. Those who are racist towards black fighters. Because right now, the only support that all these American fighters get is from black people. Black American fans are the only people that are cheering, including myself, and other black Americans who watch boxing. We're the only people that are cheering these fighters on, because the non-black American fighters are not. Yet, they want to cheer for a guy who lost his fight. Now, like I said before, I wanted Joe Smith Jr. to beat Arthur Beterbiev too. But that didn't happen. But I'm just pointing out that the racists, the anti-black racists would rather support a loser like Joe Smith Jr. than support a winner or winners like Jamel, Fulton, Clarissa, Jamel's brother Jamal, Bud Crawford, Spence, the true Spence, Errol Spence Jr., DeZern, or Stevenson. See, the American boxing fan, in particularly the non-black American boxing fan, the anti-black racist American boxing fan, as long as these fighters are black, they will not cheer them on, even though they're winning their matches. The black Americans have been winning their matches. All right, and shout out to all the black American fighters who are continuing to represent the black community and America and win the fights, because, I'm part of the black community and I am an American citizen. So that's why I'm cheering for these black American fighters. And I like Joe Smith Jr. I was cheering for him too, just because. It's just he ended up losing his match. But I'm just trying to point out the hypocrisy of the American boxing fan, in particularly the American boxing fan who is not black. I mean, you also have some sellouts, some blacks who are traitors of the black community who are also anti-black fighter because they're a bunch of sellouts, a bunch of Sambos and stuff like that. But all I gotta say is shame on the American boxing, the American boxing fan, and particularly the anti-black fighter American boxing fan. You would not cheer for these fighters even though they're winning their matches. You only cheered for Joe Smith Jr., who lost his match. Like I said, nothing against Joe Smith Jr., but you're okay cheering for the guy who lost his match, but you would not cheer for the people who won their matches. You would not cheer for these people. So shame on America for not supporting these black American fighters. Shame on America. Shame on these so-called patriots. And this is why black people don't want to stand up for the national anthem. This is why black people don't want to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance or anything that represents America, even though we are black Americans. The reason why we want to not sit down or kneel and not stand for the flag is because the flag doesn't stand for black people. The American government, the American flag, the American people do not fight for black people. They don't even fight for black Americans. America is a racist country that hates black people, even the black people who do things on the behalf of the United States of America. This is why black people question why we should support America when it comes to certain events like sports or anything that involves with Team USA. Shame on America. This is why a lot of black people don't want to really celebrate the 4th of July. We would rather acknowledge Juneteenth than acknowledge the 4th of July. I mean, even some of us don't want to acknowledge Juneteenth either. But if we had to choose between the 4th of July or Juneteenth, more black people would acknowledge Juneteenth and not the 4th of July. But that's all. I know this was a long video, but I just wanted to show the hypocrisy. And once again, like I said, these are the same people that say we have to support the flag, support the troops, but you don't support anyone who represents the United States that is black. But that's all I have to say about this video. This is J-Dog. Thank you for watching. Make sure you write down in the comment section what you think. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that notification button so hopefully you'll get notifications of my videos, and hit that like button. And also follow me on my different accounts. We're on YouTube, Black Junction, Twitter, etc. I'll leave the links to them in the description box. But this is J-Dog. Thank you for watching, and I hope to catch y'all in another video. Peace, everyone.